suggest that maybe some of you would come forward from the back and we'll begin proceedings. It's an initiative that was started by a number of congregations, and it was decided that we should do something which will serve as a unifying factor in our community. We are honored to have the participation of a number of Rabbonim. There's Rabbi here at the front, there's Rav Felder, there's Rav Stern. Those are the only ones that I see presently. I'd appreciate if you'd come forward towards the front, especially the Rabbonim, and join us up here. And it's a number of congregations. I'm going to read to you the list of the shuls which are participating in alphabetical order. Agudath Israel Anshe Kel South, Agudath Israel North, Beis HaMedrash Chasidei Bobov, Kleinman Park, Machziki Hadas, Kahal Yereim Rabbi Bixenspanner, Kailel Beis Avroam David, Kailel Toronto, Or Sameach, Jeb, Tidele David, Shari Shemayim, Shari Tfilo, Shifshu, Shari Mayim, Shari the Shabbos, Chevre Mishnais, the Malishul, the Village Shul, Teresemis Congregation, Zichrin Shneya. I'm sure that even those who are not here at present are supportive of our venture this evening. And what can be a better factor for bringing Yidden together than to discuss the subject of tefillah, which is our daily occupation, which in fact is to a certain extent a state of mind. Tefillah is, as we know, avodah shebelev, corresponding to the service which was offered in the Beis HaMikdash, avodas hakorbanos. Parallel to that, all that remains with us is avodah shebelev. The Rav Zechariah Levrocho once expressed it, that noshim achayuvis b'tefillah, because it's a mitzvah zasei sheloi hazman gromo. We'll not go into the details. We know the Gemara says that tefillah is mitzvah zasei shezman gromo, but the motivation of tefillah is an inner one. It's a service of the heart. And it's a question, how much heart do we have when we do so serve? The popular saying, there are three types of tefillah which the Melech speaks. We speak of tefillah leDavid, the Melech, tefillah leMoshe, tefillah leOni, chiyatoi b'fnei Hashem yishpat sichai. The one has a beautiful voice, he wants to serve Hashem Yisborach. We have the one, the cornerstone of our tefillahs is David HaMelech. Ne'im Zmiris Yisroel, the one, the sweet singer of Israel. The voice assists us in raising our thoughts and our hearts to Hashem Yisborach. Tefillah leMoshe. Person has a choyle b'toch beis, so it's advisable go to a chacham who will pray on your behalf. And then there is tefillah leOni chiyatoi, the one who stands before Hashem Yisborach in all his poverty and all his need, and his heart just overflows. I'm not going to elaborate on the issue. We have with Hashem a guest speaker who has devoted himself to the task of raising the level of tefillah generally, and who has prepared practical guides how we can do that, how we can make sure that indeed when we stand in tefillah, it is oimed lifnei HaMelech, we stand in God's presence. Tefillah utilizes the words of David HaMelech, who expressed it, va'ani sefillah. His entire personality was permeated by this type of avodah shebelev. Rabbi Heshy Kleinman, who is our guest for this evening, is the author of the best-selling book, Praying with Fire, a 5-minute lesson a day, and recently released Praying with Fire 2, published by Art Scroll Masorah. Rabbi Kleinman lectures internationally on prayer and other topics. He's co-founder and director of the Vanit Tfilah Foundation, dedicated to increasing awareness of the importance and power of prayer and to providing education, inspiration, and tools for more sincere, powerful, and effective tefillah. Rabbi Kleinman is also co-founder of the Hakel Public Lecture Program in Brooklyn, New York, a member of the Commission on Kedushas Beis HaKnesses of Agudath Israel of America. He's a frequent contributor to various magazines, including Jewish Observer and the OU's Jewish Action. Prior to publishing his books and devoting himself to the Vanit Tfilah Foundation, Rabbi Kleinman served as rabbi of Congregation Shachat Tfilah in Brooklyn, New York. Rabbi Kleinman received his rabbinic ordination from the Mir Yeshiva of New York. We're all eager to hear him present us with the tools that we need for effective prayer, that we should be Zocher Hashem Yisborach, heeds our tefillahs emanating from an emotional heart and unifying all of us before him. Rabbi Kleinman.
Shus Rabbonim, Shus the Tzibur. It's good to be here. I'd like to thank several individuals that have put this all together. Menachem Kuhl, Moshe Sigler, Ronen Lazar, Menachem Brown, Eli Bienenstock, Itamid Janowski, David Bain, and Michael Mills. A tremendous Yashikoyach, the schus of becoming involved with the Tzibur, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should repay you many, many times over. The topic tonight is revitalizing the world through tefillah and achdus. And I'd like to begin with a story. There's a story about a small town villager who knows very little about the way business world works. And one day he wanders into the marketplace and begins to observe two people involved in a business transaction. A seller is selling a horse to a potential buyer. Now he walks over, listens in to see if he can pick up some pointers on how to do business. And he hears that the seller says the price of this horse is $500. The buyer, on the other hand, says he's not willing to pay more than $100. Then he hears that they're negotiating. The seller says, look, I can't go lower than $400. Again, the buyer says, I'm not willing to pay a dime over $100. He then hears the seller say, $300 is my final offer. Again, the buyer sticking to his guns, says $100, not a penny more. At this point, the seller becomes desperate. He begins to cave in. And he says to the buyer, you know, you're lucky. I really need the money. $200, that's my final offer. Take it or leave it. The buyer stands firm. He says, I'm not paying a penny over $100. And the seller, finally realizing that he's not going to get his way, agrees to sell the horse to the buyer for $100. Now this villager is a little bit perturbed. He's confused. And in fact, he feels very bad for the seller. Here's an individual who wanted to sell something for $500. And yet he only received $100. So the villager goes over to the seller. And he says to him, he says, you know, I feel so bad for you. I've just witnessed the transaction. You've asked for $500. You only received $100. The seller tells him, don't feel bad for me. I just received $100 for a horse. The villager is a bit confused. But you originally asked for $500 and you only received $100. The seller says that's true. But I want you to know that the horse that I sold is a lame horse. I just got $100 for a lame horse. So the villager goes over to the buyer. He says, you know, I feel so bad for you. You just paid $100 for a lame horse. The buyer said, don't feel bad for me. This horse wasn't lame. What do you mean? The seller told me he was lame. He said, no. In fact, if you'll notice, there's a nail stuck in the hind leg of the horse. The horse appears to be lame. I just paid $100 for a horse. There's a little nail in its hind leg. So the villager goes back to the seller, and he says, you know, I feel so bad for you. The horse that you think is lame, it's not true. There's a little nail in the back of the hind leg. You got only $100 for a perfectly good horse with a little nail. The seller says, it's true, there's a nail. But I'm the one who put the nail there. You see, I knew the horse was lame. And I wanted to hide that fact from the buyer. I put the nail in the horse's leg. So at this point, the villager goes back to the buyer. He says, I feel so bad for you. You paid $100 for a horse. It's true, it has a little nail in its hind leg, but it's really lame. And I know that from the seller. So the buyer said, don't feel bad for me. You know the $100 that I paid, it was counterfeit money. Don't feel bad for me at all. So at this point, the villager goes back to the seller. He says, you know, I feel so bad for you. This horse, seems to me it was good. It had a nail. You put the nail, the whole deal. The money that you got was counterfeit. So the seller said to the villager, it's true, the money that I got is counterfeit. But don't feel bad for me. Because the horse that I sold wasn't even mine. You know, we see the events in the world. And to a certain extent, we're like the villager. We think we understand everything that's happening. We view events. We think we understand the real reasons. But the reality is things are not what they appear to be. The Gemara tells us that especially when it involves crisis and turmoil, when you have events such as the ones we have in the world today, which envelops the whole world, says the Gemara that there is a more meaningful, deeper cause to the events that we see. Says the Gemara in Yavamis, Daf Samach Gimel Amud Aleph, Ein Pur'aniyos Bala Olam Ela B'Shvil Yisrael. When there's crisis and calamity that strikes the world, it's because Klal Yisrael needs to take a lesson, says the Gemara. Uksiv Omarti Atiri, fear me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. Oh, you see, Tirki Musa, take a lesson. And the question is, what is the lesson for all the crises that are now involved literally the whole globe? I think the number one issue that is before us is something that everyone is affected by, which is the economic crisis. It's an extraordinary collapse of the financial world. And we think that we understood that the reason is because the credit markets are just not working properly, precipitated by the housing crisis. This crisis is so deep, it's so severe, that the wealthiest individual in the United States, Warren Buffett, has called this crisis an economic Pearl Harbor. And others have called it a once-in-a-century credit tsunami. And the pain is not going to stop. In fact, recently, the International Monetary Fund has declared that the global downturn is by far the deepest global recession since the Great Depression of the 1930s. The estimates are that there will be additional 15 to 25 million people that will be out of work in the next 2 years. And they predict that this will affect all countries of the world. And what is the root of such a condition? Where you see signs and you read headlines of banks are in trouble, job losses are mounting, and credit is nowhere to be found. It sounds like today's headlines, and they are. But it's also the headlines of the Great Depression of 1929. The truth is, it's a precedent for what's happening now occurred back in 1929. We called it the worldwide Great Depression. It lasted for 10 years. By 1933, the height of the Depression, 25% of the nation's United States workforce was out of work. And those that had jobs, their wages plummeted 42%. And what caused the Depression? If you read the headlines, just like we read today, credit crisis. But we know that when things happen in the world, there is a spiritual ruchnius cause to physical events. So what was the cause of the Great Depression? Rabbi Wasserman wrote a Maimon, and he explained through his perspective what was going on in the world was caused not by the credit crisis. Rabbi Wasserman said, and I quote the lashon of the Maimon, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mishalem L'Briyosav Mida Keneged Mida. Hashem pays back to the Bria Mida Keneged Mida, measure for measure. Mikivin Shoha Noshim Ivdu Es Emunosam V'Hashem Yisbarach. Because people lost their emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not al hu mehem es emunah ba'adam. What is a credit crisis? Banks won't lend. One country won't lend to another country. There's gridlock. There's an economic, financial gridlock. Nothing's moving, and therefore nothing's moving. Said Rabbi Chanan in 1929, the depression was caused neither connected neither. Because people lost their emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, neither connected neither. HaKadosh Baruch Hu remove the emunah, the trust and faith that one person has in another person. The truth is, this really needs an explanation. Because Klal Yisrael has emunah. In fact, the Gemara tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu testified to Moshe Rabbeinu that Klal Yisrael are ma'amina b'nei ma'amina. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu to tell Klal Yisrael that he's about to redeem them from Mitzrayim. Moshe Rabbeinu complained and he said, but Klal Yisrael is not going to believe me. And what does the Gemara tell us? HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered, no. Yisrael, that we are believers, we are ma'amina b'nei ma'amina. And in fact, we verify this emunah, we validate it every single day in the Shema Yisrael. We say Shema Yisrael in the morning, we say Shema Yisrael at night. Shema Yisrael is an embodiment of our emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In fact, the Rashba and the Shalos and the Chubas asks, instead of saying Shema Yisrael, it should be Tam in Yisrael. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, believe that Hashem is one. We express Shema every single day. We express our Amunah every single day. Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael is expressed in Klal Yisrael in many, many other important situations. You take a child before the night, before his bris, and by the Vachnach, everybody comes and says, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And you take the Bar Mitzvah Bacher. The first mitzvah that he'll be Makayeh is the Shema by Mariv, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And when we leave our homes and we look and kiss the mezuzah, it's an affirmation of Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. When a child is very young, the Shulchan Aruch tells us that when the child can begin to speak, we are supposed to teach them Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And it's not just as individuals, as a nation. The last thing we say in the Yom HaKadosh of Yom Kippur in unison, everyone together affirms Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So Rabbi Chanan said that the cause of the Great Depression was Mida Keneged Mida. We didn't have Emunah HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It needs an explanation. Because Klal Yisrael are Ma'amina b'nei Ma'amina. So I think an explanation can be found if we go back to an earlier time when the world was on the brink. And that was the time of Noach. The Pasuk tells us, they all came into the teva. Why? Because of the waters of the flood. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Noach to build a teva, and he does so. Yet, Noach is a little bit hesitant to go into the teva. And what compels Noach to go into the teva? When the waters start to go up, and he feels the Mei HaMabel. And Rashi cites the Medrash. And the Medrash tells us Noach's hesitancy was Af Noach B'Tanei Amona Hoya. Noach, the tzaddik, was B'Tanei Amona. Says Rashi, Mamin ve'ena Mamin Sheyavay Amabel. He was a little bit hesitant in his level of emunah that the Mabel will come like Nifnus Ateva, Achdachu Hamayim, the water pushed him in. But it's a clear. Noach had tzaddik, B'Tanei Amona. What's the explanation? So the Steipler and Bichas Paris and Pashas Noach explains as follows. Noach definitely was a maimon, but there was something missing in Noach's level of emunah. You see, Noach's emunah was an emunah sichlius, an emunah from his seichel, an intellectual understanding that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world alone. Says the Stipler, but the emunah chushis, a sensory internalization of the yesod of the concept of emunah, that was what was missing. That was what was missing. And there's a big difference if a person has emunah from his seichel, or if a person has a full-fledged feeling of emunah, that everything that happens in the world comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rambam explains emunah, listen to his lashon, soid hayesodos, the foundation of all foundations, the amoid ha-chokmos, and the pillar of wisdom is leida, to know. Leida, to know about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Is that emunah? I ask you. Leida is knowledge. Emunah is belief. What does the Rambam mean? But the pshat is what we're saying. Leida does not mean empirical knowledge. Leida means that everybody has to be aware a level of emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it must be inseparable from who we are and how we view the world. Emunah is not just an intellectual understanding that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. It's the way we view every single event that happens in the world. The Alter from Kelm explains the difference between emunah siflius and emunah chushis with the following mashal. Imagine someone who's never tasted bread. Never tasted bread. And somebody wants to convince him bread is delicious, Michael. It's wonderful, it satiates. Person never tasted bread. I can tell him, bread is wonderful. But if you come tomorrow and give him a better logical reasoning to explain that bread is not so good, he'll believe you. He'll change his mind. Says the Alter, but what happened if this person who never tasted bread, you give him bread to eat? You give him bread to taste. And now he tastes the bread, he's experienced it with his being, with his fibers. It's something that's a part of him. And tomorrow somebody comes along and says, bread's not so good for you. Bread, come on, it's really not so good. You'll never believe him. What's the difference? In the first case, if somebody understands something with his seichel, with his intellect, if you've got stronger intellect the next day, different than what he heard the day before, he'll change his mind. But if it's something that a person experiences life in a certain way, it's very difficult to change his mind for somebody else to come along and to try to convince him otherwise. That is the difference between emunah siflis and emunah chushis. We say every day in the Ani Mamin emunah shleima shehabari yisrael shemai hu borei umanig l'chol habruim. Not only did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create the world alone, but he also runs the world alone. That means that everything that happens to a person is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Every event, everything you witness, everything you hear, the fact that you're here this evening, it's all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not only the Borei Levado, is not only did he create the world alone, he's also the Manig Levado. And when a person views world events through this prism, through this light, it's a totally different experience. It's a totally different level of living. I'll mention 3 innocuous events, and to show how, with a certain level of emunah chushis, a person can recognize that everything happens from Yad Hashem. The first story involved Rav Shimshon David Pincus. Rav Shimshon David Pincus, who was living in Eretz Yisrael, had a friend who was hospitalized in New York City. And Rav Shimshon David Pincus got on a plane, and he went to visit his friend, who was on, let's say, the 5th floor of this hospital. As Rav Pincus walks down the corridor, he hears moaning, crying from a room. Doesn't know the person in the room. Takes a peek, and there's a front person, a Jew, who's crying. His tears are rolling down his cheeks. Rav Pincus goes over to him and says, "What's the matter? What's the problem? Tell me how I can help you." So the person tells Rav Pincus as follows: "I am in the hospital because I need a kidney. And I've been told that there's no match for me. And if I don't get a kidney within 2 days, I'm not going to make it. So what does Rabbi Pinkus do? He says to himself, look, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu put me here in this hospital, walking down this hallway, at the exact moment that this individual who I do not know is crying, and I hear him, and I happen to walk in, there's no such thing as happened. It's all b'yad Hashem. He concludes that the reason why he's in this hospital is not just to meet his friend down the corridor. The reason why he's in this hospital is to be able to help another Jew in need. And what does Rabbi Pinkus do? He tells this person who he never met and he never knew. He says to him, if my kidney is a match, I'll give you my kidney. I'll donate my kidney. In Kachoya, they did a test on the kidney was a match. Rabbi Pinkus was supposed to go home, take the show the next day, gets on the phone, tells his family, I've been delayed, something's come up, I'll be home a little bit late. And he tells the recipient of his kidney that I'm giving it to you on one condition. You are never, ever to relate what just happened. Chosman, I'm alive. So how do we know about this story? Because when Rabbi Pinkus was nifta, this Jew who had Rabbi Pinkus' kidney flew from New York, and he went to be Menachem Ovel, the Shiva in Eretz Yisrael, and he told them, he says, I am here alive today solely because of Rabbi Pinkus' holy kidney. Imagine a person who views, is walking down a hall in a hospital, as Yad Hashem placed there for a certain tafkid. Story number 2 involves another Adam Gola, Rabbi Victor Miller. Rabbi Miller was born in 1908 in Baltimore. And there were no yeshivas in those days. So he attended a public school and he went to an afternoon Talmud Torah. In 1932, at the age of 24, Rabbi Miller arrives in Europe to study in Slobodka. In 1938, he has to leave and come back home. And at this point, he has a wife and 2 little children. The problem is, it's very difficult to get out of Europe at that time. So he goes into the consul and he says, I need to, my wife and my children. They say, sorry, you can't leave. Not knowing what to do, so he has to speak to a supervisor. And when he comes into the room where the supervisor is, he sees the supervisor who looks at him and says, 1 second, I know you from somewhere. Sure he knew him. He was his classmate in public school many, many years ago. And Rabbi Miller later on would say that Bahashkocha, the Yad Hashem, when I need to leave Europe, and it's difficult to leave, Bahashkocha, the person sitting next to me in my public school class from years ago, happens to be the supervisor involved in letting people out of Europe to come to the United States. Third story involves another Adam Gadol. But first I'll just tell you his name. In 1901, he's a 16-year-old bacher by the name of Yecheskel. And Yecheskel, who had been working one Erev Shabbos Kodesh, goes to the mikveh. He had received his check for the work that he did, put it in his pants pocket. And when he comes out of the mikveh, he realizes that the money is missing. So right there on the spot, he thinks to himself, this is Yad Hashem. Yad Hashem. Am I going to put all my labor and my time and effort in something which is here today, gone tomorrow? And he decides to apply himself. To leave it out full time. He goes to the Lamda Yeshiva. Later on, he meets the Mashgiach of the Mir, who tells him a shmuz about Amunah. And that, in the biography of Chatzkel Levenstein, he writes, what they write about him was the turning point in his life. Imagine a person loses some money, and it's the Yad Hashem, it's a message. Because when a person understands that everything that happens to us is Bahashkofa, that is the level of emunah. It's not an emunah siflius. It's an emunah chushis. It's an emunah that we live. It's an emunah that we're magish, we feel with our chushim, with our senses. It's the experiences that we go through in life and we realize it's all the Yad Hashem. But the truth is, it's difficult. When it comes to making a panosa, it's difficult. Because we're all, so to speak, trained to realize cause and effect. The more time we put in, the greater hatzlacha we have, and it's true, we have to make our ishtadlus. But we have to realize that our hatzlacha is not in the ishtadlus we make, but the hatzlacha is b'yad Hashem, and that's why we're matzliach. To the story about Rosh Shadran, who went to visit Rav Chatzkel once. And he saw Rav Chatzkel was elated, he was jubilant. And Rav Shadran asked him, "What are you so happy?" For Rav Chatzkel, he told him something which is a little bit, if you listen to the story, Rav Chatzkel says, I was poor for many, many years. When I was the mashgiach in Mir, I didn't get such a good salary, didn't come on time, and I had to work on my betachim. And then I was appointed as the mashgiach in Ponevezh Yeshiva, and the check came on time. So he tells Rav Shadran, Baruch Hashem, the yeshiva is behind in their payment. Baruch Hashem, they're behind. And because of that, I'm not getting my salary on time the way I used to. And because of that, I have to work on my emunah. I have to work on my emunah to realize that everything is b'yad Hashem. You see, when a person is forced to work on an emunah based on personal experiences, the emunah becomes stronger. It's a more qualitative emunah. It's an emunah that will take us through our time, when times are good, and of course when times are difficult. It's something that we all need to work on, and it's difficult to work in emunah. So I'd like to suggest a strategy, and the strategy is called He'amanti Ki Adaber. He'amanti, I have emunah Ki Adaber, because I speak specifically, I'm referring to tefillah. We daven because we have emunah. We daven because whenever we come into shul, we have emunah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is listening. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Avinu, Ovarachamim, who is looking out for our best interest. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu hears all our tefillahs. But the truth is, says Alei Shur, it's true. We daven because we have emunah. But we have emunah because we daven. Whenever a person davens, when he said the tefillah, said Rav Shimshon David Pincus, Hametzias shel tefillah zu emunah. That's the essence of tefillah. That's the whole reason why we're davening. There's tremendous amount of opportunity to be able to be mechazik in emunah in our daily tefillahs. And I'd like to take a few moments to point out a few of the different areas. Let me start with the Birchas HaShachar. Birchas HaShachar. We do it every single day, and it becomes like rote. But if we stop and think into what the Birchas HaShachar are all about, for example, B'Keach Ivrim. B'Keach Ivrim. Imagine, Baruch Hashem, we get to see things. If we're not colorblind, we get to see the beautiful colors. We get to see beautiful people. The world is beautiful. B'Keach Ivrim. I suggest that people, when they say this bracha, close your eyes and say B'Keach Ivrim. And then wait, and think about what's about to happen. This tremendous miracle that when you open up your eyes, you have the ability to see the beautiful world that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given to us. B'Keach Ivrim. It happens so automatically. It happens every single day, every single morning. But B'Keach Ivrim is such a special bracha. I once spoke in Passaic, New Jersey, and I mentioned this concept. And after the lecture, somebody came over to me, a woman who said that she had some kind of a disease, and she was unable to see for 6 months. And then when finally she was able to see, she said she was jumping up and down from sheer joy. The ability to be able to see day in and day out. And if a person needs glasses, Baruch Hashem, you just go to the optometrist and you get glasses. It's so easy, and it's so beautiful. And it all comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How about the bracha, Zoi Kev Kefufim? Zoi Kev Kefufim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu straightens the person who's bent. Imagine a person's body is so stiff that he can hardly stand up straight. People who have back problems, Baruch Hashem, I have a back ailment. And from time to time I bend down, I don't get up until a day later come on. It's a problem. But Baruch Hashem, when that happens, it gives us an opportunity to appreciate this wonderful, wonderful gift that we have, that we can walk around, Baruch Hashem, without pain. What about the bracha? Hanoisin ayoev koyach. Hanoisin ayoev koyach. What a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful gift. People go to sleep at night, they're exhausted, and you wake up the next morning. Some sleep a little bit more, some sleep a little bit less. Someone's sleep is a little bit better than the other. Hanoisin ayoev koyach. You have the koyach to take on the whole day, and it lasts mamish until the night time. Hanoisin ayoev koyach. What about She'osali Kol Tzarki? Imagine, Osali Kol Tzarki. Do you know that your life is tailor-made, it's custom-made? People always love custom-made suits, custom-made houses. What about a custom-made life? She'osali Kol Tzarki. Whatever you need is for your Tapkid HaChayim, is to be able to reach your maximum potential. That's the B'echas HaShachar. Let's take a look at the Pesukah de Zimra. I've heard it many, many times. People say, why do we have to say all the Pesukah de Zimra? What are we saying? What are we doing? So I'd like to just mention very briefly a Gemara. The Gemara tells us in Masechta Shabbos, Rabbi Yossi would say, he would daven every day, it should be my lot in life that I should be able to complete the Hallel every single day. And Rashi tells us that we're not referring to the Hallel that we say on Rosh Chodesh, and we're not referring to the Hallel that we say on the Yom Tovim. And the Meshech Chochmah explains why. You see, if we would just say the Hallel that we say, the Hallel Agolo that we say on the Yom Tovim, that Hallel that we say are reserved to open miracles. And if we would just say that, that would seem to indicate that we're not makir that all the other daily miracles come from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, said the Meshech Chochmah, a person is supposed to say the Pesukah de Zimra, which is the Hallel. The Hallel, think into the words, Kol HaNeshama, the Hallel, Kol Hallelujah. You know what that means? That means every breath we take, every breath that a person is able to breathe, is Chazdei Hashem. I must tell you recently, someone in my family, you haven't been my shver, he was nifta a little bit over a month ago. And I remember the last 3.5 months of his life, he had to always be attached to an oxygen tank. And it was difficult. And every time I would see him, I would think his gift to be able to go wherever a person wants to go and have the ability to be able to breathe. Kol HaNeshama, the Halukol, Kol Neshima, Uneshima. Every breath we take is a tremendous Chazdei Hashem. That's the Pesukah de Zimra. And that's the reason why we say Pesukah de Zimra, so much of it. Because we have to internalize this Yisoy, that everything that we have is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He'emanti ki adabir. That's the reason why in the Shemona Esrei, we have to say each of the different bakashas separately. We ask for refuah, and we ask for das, and we ask for panasa, because when a person mentions each of the individual requests, he'amanti ki adaber, it instills a certain level of emunah that a person feels that everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. These are the tefillahs that we say every single day. But the truth is, just as importantly, is the tefillahs that we have the opportunity to say in between the tefillahs and shul. The Shlach Kodesh writes, Kol yochid v'yochid mechuyev lehispalel Hashem Yisbarach ezet tzarach hatzarach loy. Every need that a person needs, we're mechuyev to daven. Val kol esek ve'inin yispalel Hashem Yisbarach. People make a mistake. They think that the only concept of tefillah is to come into shul and daven when there's an inyan of the tefillah in shul, Shabbat, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. And the truth is, it's not so. Because the Gemara tells us, Rabbi Yochanan said, Halavai shalom yispala b'chol yayim. The Anshe Knesset HaGdolah did us a favor. They were masadeh the tefillahs so that we have the perfect text. As the halacha writes from the Nefesh HaChaim, that the tefillah, specific to Shemona Esrei, has soidos, nizgavos, v'olamos, deep and mighty, powerful, hidden secrets. Can you imagine a text, you come to the Melech Malchei Amlochim, and we have a text to say that was written by the Anshe Knesset Agdoila. There was a Kedem, 120, the Kama Nevi'im, and they knew the Yosef. They knew your problem and my struggle. They knew your difficulty and my own situation. And they imbued in the words of the Tefillah and the Shemona Esrei the ability to overcome all obstacles and issues, to be able to resolve all problems. That's a tremendous koyach HaTefillah. But that simply means that during those times we have the winning text. And what about all the other times? We can say our own tefillahs. You all probably experience what I experienced today. You get on a plane. The plane that I got on was one of those little planes. My grandchildren plays with those. This one seemed a little bit bigger. It was one of those, 48-seaters. And I believe firmly that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the concept of turbulence to teach us emunah. That when you go on a small plane like that, and the captain said that there's turbulence, you start to daven very, very quickly. And you daven with kavanah, and you daven with emunah. And we realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not only the Baruch Levada, he's also the Manik Levada. But it applies not only when we're on a plane, because just like on a plane, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Baruch Levada, he's the Manik Levada. Similarly, when we're down here 2 feet on the ground, there too, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Baruch Levada and the Manik Levada. The Chavetz Chaim in 1930 received a letter from a Jewish soldier who had been drafted in the Polish army. And the soldier related that he was assigned to a remote base. And there was no Yiddishkeit. He couldn't fulfill any mitzvahs. He couldn't keep Shabbos. He couldn't eat kashrus. And he became very disillusioned. And he wrote to the Chavetz Chaim, what should I do? So the Chavetz Chaim wrote him back, if it is impossible to keep Shabbos, if it is impossible to eat kosher, if it's impossible to daven with the minyan, said the Chavetz Chaim, there is one thing that you can and must do. Whenever you have a free moment, speak to God. And the Gemara Taka tells us, when a person undergoes any medical treatment, sprained ankle, a sore throat, a headache, a cut finger, whatever it might be, a person is supposed to say a tefillah. Before you take medication, say a tefillah. Rabbi Miller used to write, when it comes to panosha, you're going to see a client or a customer, say a tefillah. The tefillah doesn't have to be b'loshen kodesh. Say a tefillah in your own language. The Yevish, the Baruch Hashem, understands different languages. He understands English and Spanish and French, whatever it might be. You see, when a person says these tefillahs, the tefillah is whenever he's in a situation, for whatever the need might be, when a person says these tefillahs, say, Amanti ki adaber. Think for a moment. If we say a tefillah, that means we recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not only the Baruch Levada, he's also the Manik Levada. There's a beautiful quote from Rav Soloveitchik. It really encapsulates what we're talking about. He describes the Torah that he learned from his mother, which was different than the Torah that he learned from his father. Rav Soloveitchik writes, most of all, I learned that Judaism expresses itself not only in formal compliance with the law, but also in a living experience. I learned from my mother the most important thing in life, is to feel the presence of the Almighty and the gentle pressure of His hand resting upon my frail shoulders. Everything we go through life, we have to understand that there's the Yad Hashem in everything that happens. That was what Rav Soloveitchik learned from his mother. I'd like to share with you a story of something that I learned from my mother. My mother, Allah Shalom, was in Hungary at the end of the war. And it seems that there was a makeshift old hotel that all the Jews of the town slept in. And it seems that, if I remember the story correctly, they were able to fit 200 and there were 700 people. and there was a curfew in the town, and you were allowed to go out to the market from 10 o'clock in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. And one day my mother goes to the marketplace, and she sees the Gentile woman from the town that she grew up as a child, and it seems that the families got along. And this woman says to my mother, "Why don't you come stay with me? I'll hide you in the attic. You'll be safe, you'll be sound, everything will be fine." My mother tells the lady, "But you know, we're safe over here. Why should I go from a place that I'm sure we're safe?" The lady said, "Listen, I'll be back at 5 o'clock. If you want to come, I'll take you with me and I'll hide you." My mother said to me, she said, "You know, when I got back at 4:30, I started shaking. And I don't know why, I can't explain it, but something overcame me, and I just kind of felt that I really have to leave." And she had her younger sister, my aunt, who was with her, and she was reluctant to go, until my mother tells me, she said, I dragged her arm and I pulled her out of it. And as we walked into the town, we looked behind us and the gates closed. And sure enough, we met this Gentile woman. And sure enough, as she had promised, she took us to her home, and we went up into the attic. The next morning, the lady comes home from shopping in the town square, and she starts yelling for my mother to come down from the attic. Why? What's happening? So she comes in and she throws a newspaper on the kitchen table. And on the front picture, on the front page, drew the picture of that old hotel burning, and a picture of the Jewish bodies that were killed, that was strewn in the street in front of the building. Baruch Hashem, that my mother was able to make it out. And when I asked her, and I used to say to her, "What compelled you to leave? How did you know? It's a question of life and death. Baruch Hashem, you made it. What compelled you to make that fateful decision?" And I'll never forget, she would say to me, my mother had no formal education. And she would say to me, "You know what I always do," she said, "when I have a dilemma, a decision that is of great importance, I look up to Shemayim," she said, "I would raise my hand and say, Bashefa Zisa, Bashefa Zisa, help me." Emunah Chushis. Emunah Chushis is a level of emunah that we see all the events in life as being Yad Hashem. So the Eitzah, according to Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, to be able to alleviate the pain of the financial crisis. If the tzara came about because of midah keneged midah, according to Rabbi Chanan, then the Yeshua is also to have a greater level of emunah, and to be mechazik that emunah in our tefillas, not only in the tefillas that we daven, the Birkat HaShach and the Pesukei de Zimra and the Krishma and the Shemona Esrei, and to stop and think what all of the things that we're saying, what they really represent. Because we daven because we have emunah. But Ha'amati ki adaber, we have emunah because we daven. And it's not just those tefillahs, it's the tefillahs that we can say on our own, wherever we are, whether it's in business, whether we're involved in a medical situation, whether we're on a plane, or Pashut, you want to get somewhere on time. We can say a tefillah Ha'amati ki adaber. But the truth is, we can do much more than that. In fact, we can bring not only an end to the financial crisis, to be mechazik emunah through tefillah, we can also bring the geula. And previously I looked at an event that happened 80 years ago, the Great Depression. For this, I'd like to go all the way back to a time when there was a geula for Klal Yisrael. And I'm referring to the geula Mitzrayim. Rav Saadia Gaon writes that the prototype of the geula ha'asid that will come b'korei mamish be'ezus Hashem is the geula of Mitzrayim. And if you go back to the psukim, the pasuk in Shemos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, the geula is coming. Tell Klal Yisrael, the geula is kroiv alavai. And what happens? The pasuk tells us, Parai decides from now on, I'm not going to supply the materials to make the bricks. Loi soy sifun, lo seis teben, lo om, lulvoin alaveinu, kitmel shulshaim. Oh no. Hem yechu b'koshel lehem teben. You're going to have to come up with your own raw materials, and the quota is going to be the same. Could you imagine? Klal Yisrael is told that the geula is kroiv alavai, and yet this is geula The situation is more difficult. The pain, the tsaris is getting deeper and deeper. This is the Geula. So I saw Ramat Yisrael, Solomon explains as follows. Klal Yisrael was not being punished at that time. You see, when the Geula is mamish, kroy v'lavai, and we're a little bit short, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to reach, to rise above, to be able to do something unique, something that will give us a tremendous push, because the threshold of the Geula is so close. And I'm not here to prognosticate. The Rambam said this is not for us to go into the cheshbon, but on account from all the simanim, the Geula is kroy v'lavai, when the Achros Hayomim. Says Ramat Yisrael Solomon, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Klal Yisrael the key to their Geula. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the situation more difficult for them. Because when the tzaras becomes more difficult, what does the person do? He reaches up with tefillah. And the level of tefillah is a more qualitative tefillah. Because the person realizes that it's only Yeshua comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You know the way it works. When things are Baruch Hashem fine, we get complacent. Become lackadaisical. We lose our focus. Things are good, Baruch Hashem. Yeah, the Eibush is involved. But it's an emunah sickness. When a person has the experience that there's only one address for his Yeshua. It's something that he experiences, an emunah chushis. It's something that he knows deep in his heart. But Ramat Yisrael went one step further. Besides tefillah, when other members of Klal Yisrael are in pain, we need to feel their tzarah. It's the yesod of Achdus. It's the yesod of Achdus. Because Achdus together with tefillah are the keys to the Geula. Imagine if we would have the instructions on how to end all the suffering in the world. Imagine if we would have the instructions on how to bring peace and harmony, shalom and Achdus to all of mankind. Imagine if we would be given the instructions and how to end jealousy and sinas chinam and anger, resentment and akvodah. Imagine if we would be given the instructions, literally, how to build the Beis HaMikdash. Tefillah and Achdus. We know what tefillah is. We've just spoken about it. But what exactly is Achdus? You know, sometimes we tell our children, listen, no fighting, I don't want to hear any machlokes. Just get along. Is that Achdus? Is just getting along, is that really the yesod, the quality of Achdus that can bring the Geula? So if you take a look in the Torah, you see that Achdus is more than just the absence of machlokes. We know that this one day of the 7 days of creation, that the Torah does not write the word ki toiv, and that is the second day that the world was created. We all know that the heavens were created on the first day, and everything was in a state of flux. And on the second day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, there should be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it separate between water and water. And the Medrash tells us, you know why it doesn't say ki toiv on the second day? Because ki toiv, the second day was a day of machlokes, a day of kirud. Water separated from water. And when you have machlokes, there can't be toiv. But the truth is, it's more than that. The Meshav Davar writes, listen to his lashon. He writes that the reason why he doesn't say ki toiv and machlokes shehu l'kiyum shalaylam, when the world was created on the second day, ein boy ki toiv, machlokes shehu li'arvu shalaylam, malachas kama v'kama, it's not toiv. But then he said the yesod, which is the yesod of what Achdus really is. V'ein al-pirish machlokes kan elo pirud bein hadrei. Pirud. We think that machlokes, the root of all evil is machlokes. It's really not so. If you think about it, machlokes is the symptom. But the cause of the lack of achdus is pirud, it's separation. And if you really want a clear example of what the yesod of achdus is, again, you take a look in the Torah. In the beginning of Vayakel, the pasuk said, Vayakel Moshe kol hadas bnei Yisrael. Moshe gathered all of Klal Yisrael. Vayom aleim elad rama shetziv Hashem la'asok tzayso, referring to the building of the Mishkan. And Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky writes in the Sefer Emel Yaakov, when Klal Yisrael stood at Har Sinai, the pasuk tells us, Vayichan Shom lo Yisrael neged ha'or, they encamped, and the lashon is the lashon Yochid. And Rashi tells us from a medrash, Ki ish echad b'lei echad. But you know what happened since then? There was the Chet HaEgel. The Chet HaEgel. That achdus, with that higher purpose, standing by Kabbalas HaTorah, was now lost. They lost it. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu was compelled to tell Klal Yisrael, gather together by Yakel. And what's very intriguing is that the Medrash tells us, Mitchilas HaTorah v'yatzoifa ein bo pasha shenema b'reisha Vayakel. This is the only place where it says Vayakel, the beginning of the pasha. Isn't that strange? But you know what the answer is? Vayakel. If we get together in achdus, it has to be for a higher purpose. It has to be not just people getting together without differences. We'll be focused perhaps on our differences. Achdus really represents getting together with a focus and a determination to go to the next level of ruchnius. Rabbi Gedalia Yeshua writes, Kol ha'achdus bo lahem, why? Mishum sheniskaru liyavim shabash shamayim. Like Kabbalas HaTorah, Klal Yisrael came close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'hayu debekim el hamakor, they became the Udaber to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hayu kulam b'teilum Hashem echad HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Oz nasu ki ish echad b'lei echad. And if you think about it, they just went through the Chet HaEgel. And yet, 50 days later, Kabbalas HaTorah, how is it possible? How is it possible to achieve such achdus at such a high level? So again, Rav Shor writes, V'eicha givu matan Torah dar gedushal amdusay, how? Ayidei ha'avoida shal chamishim yoyim, she'echinu atzmon, v'nizdaku ad asher zochu liyot b'achdus. You see, when we get together with a focus that stems from a ruchnius source, then, since the cause of the achdus will never end, it's ruchnius. Ruchnius has no limit. Ruchnius has no end. Ruchnius is infinite and it'll last forever. Similarly, if our focus in our achdus is with the higher source, with the higher focus, with the higher meaning and a higher calling, that achdus will always remain. Achdus. We get together. As Rav Shor writes by Kabbalas HaTorah, Sheniskaru liyavim shabashamayim. What better way for Toronto to unite in achdus with the concept of tefillah, which is also iskaru liyavim shabashamayim, because that is the real achdus. When we use ruchnius as our rallying point, when we use tefillah as our focal point, when we all together, everybody at their own level of davening, but when we all unite to try to elevate the tefillah of a makam, of a community, that is the true achdus. But the truth is, there was another time that we find the lashon of gather together, and we find it by Yaakov Avinu. When Yaakov Avinu was about to die, he tells his sons, Vayuka Yaakov el banav vayamru hey asfu, gather around me, Avinu lachem et asher yuka eskom Yaakov sayomim.